What would you do if everyone treated you like you didn't belong, even when you had every right to be there? Before we begin this incredible story, please hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Heartbound Stories. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Diana Moore walked down the airplane aisle like she had done 100 times before. Her steps were quiet. Her face was calm. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a small bag. Nothing about her screamed rich or important. She looked like anyone else. That was exactly what she wanted. She found her seat. First class. Row 1. Seat A. Right by the window. She placed her bag in the overhead bin and sat down. The leather seat was soft. The cabin smelled like expensive perfume and fresh coffee. Other passengers settled in around her. Some wore fancy suits. Others had designer bags. They belonged here. At least, that's what their faces said. Diana buckled her seatbelt and looked out the window. The airport workers rushed around outside. Bags flew onto conveyor belts. Trucks beeped and moved. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Then Rachel appeared. Rachel was the lead flight attendant. She had blonde hair pulled back tight. Her smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold. She walked through first class, checking passengers, nodding at some, ignoring others. When she reached Diana's row, she stopped. Her smile disappeared. "Excuse me," Rachel said. Her voice was sweet, but something sharp hid underneath. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Diana looked up. She smiled softly. "Of course." She pulled out her phone and showed the digital ticket. The seat number was clear. 1A. First class. Paid in full. Rachel stared at the screen. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "This doesn't look right." "It scanned at the gate," Diana said calmly. The light turned green. "Scanners make mistakes," Rachel replied. She pulled out her tablet and tapped the screen several times. Her fingers moved fast, almost angry. "I'm showing this seat was reassigned." Diana's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Reassigned to whom?" Rachel didn't answer. Instead, she smiled that cold smile again. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move to economy. We have a situation with the seating." Around them, other passengers started watching. Phones came out slowly. Eyes turned toward Diana. Whispers began to crawl through the cabin like insects. "There's no situation," Diana said. Her voice stayed soft, but something steel-strong lived inside it. "My ticket is valid. I paid for this seat. I'm staying here." Rachel's face turned red. "Ma'am, I'm asking nicely. Please don't make this difficult." "I'm not making anything difficult," Diana said. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat." A man across the aisle spoke up. He wore an expensive watch and a smug expression. "Just move to the back. You're holding up the flight." Diana didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Rachel. Rachel's jaw tightened. She turned and walked toward the front of the plane. Diana watched her go. Her heart beat faster, but her face showed nothing. She had expected this. Not hoped for it, but expected it. 2 minutes later, Rachel returned. Behind her walked 2 security officers. They wore dark uniforms and serious faces. One was tall and broad. The other was shorter but looked mean. "Ma'am," the tall officer said, "we need you to come with us." Diana looked at both of them. "Why?" "You're disrupting the flight," Rachel said quickly. "I'm sitting quietly in my seat," Diana replied. "You're refusing to follow crew instructions," Rachel shot back. The shorter officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, we can do this easy or hard. Your choice." Diana felt every eye in first class burning into her. Phones were definitely recording now. She could see the red lights. She could hear the whispers growing louder. "This is crazy," someone muttered. "Just do what they say," another voice added. A woman in row 3 shook her head. "This is wrong." But no one stood up. No one defended her. They just watched like she was a show on television. Diana took a slow breath. "I want to speak to the captain." "The captain is busy preparing for takeoff," Rachel said. Her voice was sharp now, like breaking glass. "You need to leave. Now." The tall officer reached for Diana's arm. "Let's go, ma'am." Diana pulled her arm back. "Don't touch me." "Then walk," the shorter officer said. Diana stood slowly. Her legs felt steady, but her chest felt tight. She picked up her bag from the overhead bin. Every movement was careful, controlled. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her panic. As she stepped into the aisle, Rachel grabbed her other arm. "This way." They walked her through first class like she was a criminal. Past the business travelers sipping champagne. Past the families with expensive strollers. Past everyone who looked away because looking was uncomfortable. A young girl, maybe 7 years old, stared at Diana with wide eyes. "Mommy, why are they taking that lady?" "Shoo," the mother whispered. "Don't stare." But the girl kept staring. Her eyes said what the adults wouldn't. "This is wrong." They reached the front of the plane. The captain stood there. He was tall, with gray hair and a uniform covered in badges. His name tag said Captain Brooks. "What's happening here?" he asked. "Disruptive passenger," Rachel said quickly. "Refused to change seats. Argued with crew." Captain Brooks looked at Diana. His eyes scanned her up and down. Not with kindness. With judgment. "Ma'am, is this true?" Diana met his gaze. "My ticket is valid. I have every right to sit in first class. They're removing me because they don't think I belong here." Rachel gasped. "That's not true. This is about following policy." "Policy," Diana repeated. The word tasted bitter. "What policy says a paying passenger with a valid ticket gets dragged off a plane?" Captain Brooks's face hardened. "Ma'am, my crew makes the decisions about passenger behavior. If they say you need to leave, you need to leave." "Without checking my ticket yourself?" Diana asked. "I trust my crew," he said. Those 4 words said everything. He didn't need to check. He had already decided, just by looking at her. The security officers moved closer. "Time to go," the tall one said. Diana looked around the cabin one more time. All those faces. All those phones. All those people who would go home tonight and forget this happened. But she wouldn't forget. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll go." Rachel's smile returned, victorious. "Thank you for your cooperation." They walked Diana down the jet bridge. Away from the plane. Away from her seat. Away from the dignity she had paid for. Behind her, the plane door closed with a heavy thunk. Rachel returned to first class, smoothing her hair. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly." The passengers settled back into their seats. The champagne kept flowing. The conversations resumed. Within minutes, it was like Diana had never been there at all. Except for one person. In the very back of first class sat a young flight attendant named Lily. She was new, still in training. She had scanned Diana's ticket at the gate. She had seen the green light. She had known the ticket was valid. But when Rachel said it wasn't, Lily had stayed quiet. Because speaking up meant trouble. And trouble meant losing her job. Now, sitting in her jump seat, Lily felt sick. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engines roared to life. They taxied toward the runway. In the terminal, Diana stood at the giant windows, watching her plane prepare for takeoff. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen, calm and precise. She pressed one button. On the plane, Rachel's tablet suddenly went black. Then lit up again. Red letters flashed across the screen. System override activated. Rachel stared at it, confused. What in the world? Captain Brooks's radio crackled. A voice came through, clear and cold. "This is executive control. All crew members, stand by. We have a situation." The plane stopped moving, and Diana, standing in the terminal, smiled for the first time that day. The game was just beginning. Inside the plane, panic spread like wildfire. Rachel stared at her tablet. The red letters kept flashing. System override activated. She tapped the screen. Nothing happened. She pressed the power button. Nothing. Her hands started shaking. "What's going on?" asked Marcus, another flight attendant. He rushed over, pulling out his own device. His screen showed the same message. Captain Brooks burst out of the cockpit. "Who activated the override?" "We didn't do anything," Rachel said. Her voice cracked. "It just happened." The captain's radio crackled again. That same cold voice came through. "Captain Brooks, this is executive control. Return to the gate immediately." "Executive control?" Brooks repeated. He had flown for 20 years. He had never heard that phrase before. "Who is this?" "Return to the gate, Captain. This is not a request." The passengers started murmuring. A businessman in row 2 leaned forward. "What's happening? Why aren't we taking off?" Brooks ignored him. He grabbed Rachel's arm. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I just removed a passenger who wouldn't follow instructions." "The woman in 1A?" Rachel nodded. Her face had gone pale. Brooks's radio crackled once more. "Captain, we have reviewed the security footage. The passenger you removed was Diana Moore, CEO and owner of Skyrise Airlines. You have exactly 5 minutes to return to the gate." The words hit like a bomb. Rachel's tablet fell from her hands. It clattered on the floor. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Marcus grabbed the wall to steady himself. "Did he just say CEO?" The passengers erupted. Phones came out faster. Everyone started talking at once. They dragged off their own boss? "This is insane. Someone get this on video." Captain Brooks felt his chest tighten. His hands went cold. 20 years of flying. 20 years of perfect reviews. And he had just kicked his boss off her own plane. In the terminal, Diana walked slowly toward the gate. Her phone was still in her hand. She could see everything happening on the plane through her screen. Every locked device. Every panicked face. Every moment of their realization. She had built Skyrise Airlines from nothing. 15 years ago, she was a flight attendant herself. She knew what it felt like to serve passengers. She knew what it felt like to be treated like she was invisible. So when she became CEO, she made a promise. Her airline would be different. Her airline would treat every passenger with respect. Every single one. She had sent that message in every training manual, every employee handbook, every company meeting. But messages on paper don't always reach people's hearts. So today, she decided to test it. She boarded as a regular passenger. No announcement. No special treatment. Just a woman with a ticket. She wanted to see what really happened when the cameras weren't supposed to be watching. Now she had her answer. The plane rolled back to the gate. The jet bridge extended with a mechanical whine. The door opened. Diana stepped inside. The cabin fell completely silent. Every passenger turned to look at her. Every phone was recording. The flight attendants froze like statues. Diana walked down the aisle slowly. Her footsteps were the only sound. She reached row 1A. Her seat. The seat they had dragged her from. She sat down. Rachel stood nearby, trembling. "Ms. Moore, I didn't know." Diana held up one hand. "Don't." Rachel's mouth snapped shut. Diana looked around the cabin. At all the passengers who had watched her get removed. At all the people who had said nothing. "Let me tell you all a story," Diana said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard every word. 15 years ago, I was a flight attendant. Just like Rachel here. One day, I watched my supervisor remove an elderly black man from first class. He had a valid ticket. He had done nothing wrong. But my supervisor said he looked suspicious. The cabin remained silent. I didn't speak up, Diana continued. I was scared of losing my job. Scared of causing trouble. So I stayed quiet while they walked that man off the plane. And you know what? That moment changed my life. She paused. Her eyes swept across every face. I promised myself that if I ever had the power to change things, I would. So I worked. I saved. I studied. And eventually, I built this airline. I built it on one simple rule. Treat people like people. Not like problems. Rachel's face was wet with tears. I'm so sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Diana said. Sorry is what you say when you spill coffee. This wasn't coffee. This was cruelty. Captain Brooks stepped forward. His voice was barely a whisper. Ms. Moore, I take full responsibility. You should, Diana said. You're the captain. You had the power to check my ticket yourself. You had the power to ask questions. But you trusted Rachel's judgment without evidence. Why? Brooks opened his mouth. Then closed it. He had no answer. Or maybe he had an answer he didn't want to say out loud. Diana turned to the passengers. And all of you. You watched. You recorded. But only one person said this was wrong. One voice in a cabin full of people. A woman in row 3 raised her hand slowly. I said it was wrong. You did, Diana agreed. You said it. But did you stand up? Did you demand they check the ticket? Did you do anything except whisper? The woman looked down at her lap. Diana's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Messages from her executive team were flooding in. The board of directors was calling emergency meetings. News stations were picking up the story from passenger videos. In 2 hours, this would be national news. In 4 hours, it would be international. Diana stood up. Rachel, you're suspended effective immediately. Captain Brooks, you're grounded pending investigation. Marcus, you're acting lead attendant for this flight. Marcus looked terrified. Ma'am, I don't know if I'm qualified. You didn't drag me off the plane, Diana said. That makes you more qualified than Rachel. She walked toward the back of the cabin, past the staring passengers, past the frozen crew, until she reached the very last row. Lily sat there in her jump seat, the young trainee. Her eyes were red. Diana stopped in front of her. You scanned my ticket at the gate. Lily nodded, unable to speak. You saw the green light. Another nod. But you didn't say anything when Rachel claimed my ticket was invalid. Lily's voice came out as a whisper. I was scared. Of what? Of her. Of losing my job. Of being the new person who causes problems. Diana sat down next to her. The CEO of a billion-dollar airline, sitting in the back row next to a trainee. Let me tell you something, Lily, Diana said softly. Fear is a cage. And people like Rachel know how to use that cage. They know that if they make you scared enough, you'll stay quiet. Even when you see something wrong. Lily wiped her eyes. I should have spoken up. Yes, Diana agreed. You should have. But you're not the villain in this story. You're the person who has to decide what kind of flight attendant you want to be. The kind who stays silent, or the kind who speaks truth even when it's hard. Lily looked up at Diana. Really looked at her. I want to be the second kind. Good, Diana said. Because I need people like that. This airline needs people like that. She stood up and walked back to the front of the plane. Rachel was being escorted off by airport security. Captain Brooks was gathering his things, his career probably over. Diana pulled out her phone and made a call. Paul, it's me. Yes, I'm fine. Listen, I need you to do something. Every employee at Skyrise is going to mandatory retraining. Starting tomorrow. I don't care if it costs millions. We're going to rebuild this company from the inside out. She listened for a moment. No, don't fire everyone. That's the easy way. I want them to understand why this was wrong. I want them to feel it. And then I want them to be better. Diana ended the call. She looked at Marcus. Can you fly this plane to Los Angeles with a substitute captain? Yes, ma'am. We have a backup crew standing by. Good. Make the announcement. We're still going to Los Angeles. Just 2 hours late. As Marcus scrambled to coordinate with the gate crew, a businessman in first class stood up. He was the same man who had told Diana to move to the back earlier. Ms. Moore, he said. His voice was tight. I owe you an apology. Diana looked at him. What's your name? Richard Chen. Well, Richard, do you know what I don't need? Empty apologies from people who only feel sorry after they find out who I am. If I was really just a regular passenger, would you still be apologizing? Richard's face turned red. He sat back down. Diana addressed the entire cabin one more time. We're going to fly to Los Angeles today. And all of you are going to think about what you saw, what you said, what you didn't say. Because what happened to me happens to people every single day. And those people don't own airlines. They can't press a button and make systems lock down. They just suffer. Quietly. While everyone else looks away. She paused. The cabin was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. So when you post your videos online, when you tell the story to your friends, I want you to ask yourself one question. If you see something wrong tomorrow, will you speak up? Or will you look away again? Diana returned to seat 1A and sat down. A new captain boarded. A new energy filled the plane. And slowly, carefully, they prepared for takeoff once more. This time, Diana would reach Los Angeles. But the journey was far from over. The plane climbed into the sky. Outside the windows, clouds drifted past like cotton balls. Inside, nobody spoke. The silence felt thick, like breathing underwater. Diana sat in 1A, looking out at the endless blue. She could feel every eye on her. The passengers were scared to move, scared to talk, scared to even breathe too loud. She didn't blame them. They had just watched their world flip upside down. Marcus came by with the drink cart. His hands shook as he poured water into a cup. Ms. Moore, would you like anything? Water is fine, Diana said gently. And Marcus? Breathe. You're doing great. He nodded, but his face stayed pale. 30 minutes into the flight, turbulence hit. The plane shook. Overhead bins rattled. A few passengers gasped. The seatbelt sign dinged on. Diana felt the bump but didn't flinch. She had flown millions of miles. She knew the difference between dangerous turbulence and just a bumpy ride. But in the back of the plane, Lily gripped her armrests. This was only her third flight as crew. Every shake felt like the plane might fall apart. Marcus spoke into the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some light chop. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. The shaking continued, then got worse. The plane dropped suddenly, like missing a step in the dark. Screams filled the cabin. Diana's water spilled across her tray table. She grabbed napkins and wiped it up, still calm. But something was wrong. The turbulence shouldn't last this long. The plane tilted left, then right, like it couldn't find balance. Marcus rushed toward the cockpit. Diana stood up and followed him. What's happening? She asked. The new captain, a woman named Torres, was fighting with the controls. One of the navigation systems went offline. The override you activated earlier, it locked out some backup systems. Diana's heart dropped. The override shouldn't affect navigation. It shouldn't, Torres agreed. But something went wrong. We're flying manual right now. Diana pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen. She accessed the airline's main system. Lines of code scrolled past. Then she saw it. The override had cascaded into systems it shouldn't have touched. She had made a mistake. Her desire to teach a lesson, to lock down the crew's devices, had accidentally triggered a deeper malfunction. "Can you fly without the system?" Diana asked. Torres nodded. "Yes. But it's harder. And if the turbulence gets worse." She didn't finish the sentence. Diana understood. If the turbulence got worse, flying manual could become dangerous. She made a decision. "I'm shutting down the override. All systems will come back online." "Do it," Torres said. Diana typed quickly. Her finger hovered over the final button. Shutting down the override meant Rachel and Brooks would get their devices back. The evidence of what they did might disappear if they were smart enough to delete it. But the safety of 200 passengers mattered more than revenge. She pressed the button. Throughout the plane, tablets and phones lit back up. In the terminal back in New York, Rachel's device buzzed to life in the security office where she sat waiting. The plane's systems hummed back online. Torres smiled. "There we go. Navigation is back." The turbulence started to ease. The shaking slowed. Within minutes, the ride smoothed out completely. Diana walked back to her seat. As she passed the passengers, a little boy, maybe 6 years old, looked up at her. "Are you the boss of the plane?" he asked. Diana smiled. "Sort of. My dad says bosses are mean. But you don't seem mean." His mother tried to shush him. "Tyler, don't bother the lady." "He's not bothering me," Diana said. She knelt down next to Tyler's seat. "You know what makes a good boss, Tyler? Not being the loudest person in the room. Not having the fanciest office. A good boss listens. A good boss admits when they make mistakes. And a good boss protects the people who can't protect themselves." Tyler nodded seriously, like she had just told him the secret to the universe. Diana stood and continued to her seat. But she couldn't stop thinking about what just happened. Her override had nearly caused a real problem. She had been so focused on teaching a lesson that she hadn't considered all the risks. "Pride comes before the fall," her grandmother used to say. An hour later, Los Angeles appeared below them. The city sparkled in the afternoon sun. The plane began its descent. Diana's phone buzzed. Messages were flooding in. The story had exploded online. Videos of her being dragged off the plane had millions of views. News stations were calling it everything from justice to a publicity stunt. But one message caught her eye. It was from Rachel. "Ms. Moore, I know I don't deserve your attention. But I need you to know something. I wasn't born cruel. I learned it. I watched my supervisors treat certain passengers badly. I watched them get promoted for keeping first class comfortable for the wealthy guests. I learned that being kind to everyone meant being weak. I'm not asking for my job back. I just wanted you to know that what I did was wrong. And I'm sorry." Diana read it twice. Then 3 times. Rachel wasn't making excuses. She was explaining. There was a difference. The plane touched down smooth as silk. The passengers clapped, which they almost never did. But today was different. Today they had witnessed something bigger than a flight. The plane taxied to the gate. The door opened. But nobody stood up. They all waited. Diana gathered her bag and walked toward the exit. As she passed each row, passengers looked at her. Some with shame. Some with respect. Some with questions they didn't know how to ask. When she reached Lily's jump seat, the young woman stood up. "Ms. Moore, I want to say something in front of everyone." Diana stopped. "Go ahead." Lily turned to face the cabin. Her voice shook but grew stronger with each word. "Today I was a coward. I saw something wrong and I said nothing. I told myself I was protecting my job. But really, I was just protecting my comfort. Ms. Moore, you asked me what kind of flight attendant I want to be. I want to be the kind who speaks up. Even when I'm scared. Even when it's hard. So I'm saying it now, in front of all these witnesses. What happened to you was wrong. And I should have said so from the beginning. The cabin was silent. Then, from row 7, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the whole plane erupted in applause. Lily's eyes filled with tears. But she was smiling. Diana hugged her. You just became the kind of person this airline needs. Diana walked off the plane. The jet bridge was packed with news cameras, airport security, and her executive team. Paul, her VP of operations, rushed forward. Diana, are you okay? This is a nightmare. The board wants to do damage control. No damage control, Diana said. We're not hiding from this. But the stock price will recover, Diana finished. You know what won't recover? The trust of passengers if we pretend this didn't happen. A reporter shoved a microphone in her face. Ms. Moore, was this a publicity stunt? Diana looked directly into the camera. No. This was a test. And my airline failed. But failure isn't the end. Failure is information. Now we know where the problems are. Now we can fix them. What happens to the crew members who removed you? Rachel and Captain Brooks are suspended. They'll go through extensive retraining. If they show real change, real understanding of what they did wrong, they might get another chance. But that's a big if. Some people are saying you overreacted by locking down the plane systems. Diana paused. This was the hard part. The part where she had to admit her own mistake. They're right, she said. My override created a malfunction that could have been dangerous. I was so focused on making a point that I didn't think through all the consequences. I'm not perfect. I made a mistake today, too. The difference is, I'm going to learn from it. The reporters went quiet. They hadn't expected that answer. Diana continued. Here's what I want people to understand. What happened to me today happens to people all the time. But those people can't shut down a plane's systems. They can't suspend anyone. They just have to sit with the humiliation and move on. That's the real problem. Not that it happened to me, but that it happens at all. She walked past the cameras, through the terminal, toward the exit. Outside, the California sun was bright and warm. Diana stood for a moment, letting it touch her face. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from an email address she didn't recognize. Ms. Moore, you don't know me. But 15 years ago, I was removed from a first-class seat on an airline that doesn't exist anymore. A young flight attendant watched it happen. She looked sad, but she didn't say anything. I never forgot that day. But today, watching what you did, I finally feel like someone understands. Thank you. Signed, Mr. James Walker. Diana's breath caught in her throat. Mr. Walker. The elderly man. The one she had watched get removed all those years ago. The one who changed her life. He had seen the videos. He knew it was her. Tears filled Diana's eyes. Not sad tears. Something else. Something like closure mixed with purpose. She typed a response. Mr. Walker, I'm the flight attendant who didn't speak up for you. I've carried that shame for 15 years. I built this airline because of what happened to you. I'm sorry I was silent then. But I promise you, I'll never be silent again. She pressed send. 3 months later, Skyrise Airlines implemented new policies. Every employee went through bias training. Every complaint was investigated by an independent team. Every passenger had a direct line to report problems. Rachel completed her retraining. She requested to work in economy, not first class. I need to remember that every passenger matters, she told Diana. Not just the ones who look like they belong. Captain Brooks retired. He said flying didn't feel right anymore. Diana sent him a retirement gift anyway. A book about implicit bias with a note. It's never too late to learn. Lily became a supervisor within a year. She created a program for new employees called Speak Up, Stand Up. It taught crew members how to challenge wrong decisions, even from their bosses. And Diana. She kept flying commercial, kept testing her airline, kept making sure that the values on paper matched the reality in the air. Because change doesn't happen in boardrooms and policy meetings alone. Change happens when someone with power decides to use it for something bigger than themselves. The story of the woman who was dragged off her own plane became famous. But Diana hoped people remembered the real lesson. It's not about who owns the airline. It's about who belongs in first class. And the answer is simple. Everyone.